Is there such a thing as a bad premise? Or is there a good premise? Or are there just premises you're either emotionally connected to or not emotionally connected to? And how do you find premises that are ripe to write comedy on? That's what we're going to be addressing here in this episode of Ask the Joke Doctor. Hi, Jerry Corley here, standupcomedyclinic.com with another episode of Ask the Joke Doctor. In this episode, we're going to discuss a tweet, go figure, and it is actually on the little bumper there I gave you. It's on premises. I got a really, really good question from a regular follower on Twitter. I'm still not comfortable with that saying follower, but he says it's from Funny Person, Funny Paranoid R, which is, I always recognize him by the little Einstein caricature there, little avatar with Einstein smoking a cigar. Hey, I wonder what the theory is, the relative theory is for mouth cancer. Anyway, so he says, hey, Joke Doctor, I'm finding it easier to come up with material once I have a good premise. So that's good, right? Once you have a good premise, finding it easier to come up with material, so accomplishment. But it says, then to write good material for a bad premise. I sometimes find it difficult to find a good premise in the first place. Are there techniques to generate unique, funny premises? Great question, and we're going to answer that right now. First of all, I would like to say, first answer, is there such a thing as a bad premise? That's a great question. See, as a writer, I tried to train myself to be able to write something funny about any logical grouping of words. And I try to tell my students that, to embody that phrase. You can take any logical grouping of words, and make it funny. Now, granted, there are logical groupings of words that I have on my computer with that I haven't gotten to yet, but I'll get there eventually. Now, and I usually do. The thing is there's always a funny way to approach any premise. So let's get that out of the way. There aren't bad premises. There's just certain things that excite us, certain things that don't excite us when it comes to comedy. Now, if you're a writer in a show, right, you're on staff, let's say The Tonight Show, and the executive producer or head writer comes up and says, hey man, we need 10 jokes on this topic, on depression, or we need 10 jokes on family. We need 10 jokes on quantitative easing. What the hell is quantitative easing? It's like it's at the Treasury Department, right? It's when they print extra money to sort of adjust for inflation or adjust the value of the dollar. So in the United States, quantitative easing. So that's what they call it. But who's emotionally connected to that? Nobody. But John Oliver is an expert at taking premises nobody's connected to, or doesn't really feel an association to, and finding a way to make it funny. He uses analogy. Like with quantitative easing, he might say something, it's like pudding. And then he goes through and he says several things about pudding that's related to printing extra money. He's a genius that way. And that's what makes John Oliver win the Emmy for the last, I think, 5 years in a row for a late night variety talk show. So take a look at John Oliver. He'll show you how to take a premise you're not excited about and make it funny. But let's see. When you start, sometimes when you have a premise, what's usually missing is an angle, right? You'll see, if you're especially writing current events jokes, you get in there, there's nothing you're excited about on this particular subject matter. But sometimes that subject is trending, and as a writer, you're expected to come up with some funny about it. This is what I like to do. I like to figure out what's missing is my angle or point of view. So if the show has a specific point of view about a certain topic, then that can affect the direction of where these jokes are going. Now, if the show is trying to prove something wrong, then with that particular subject matter, now you have a point of view or an angle. But the angle is what's usually missing. And the angle is your attitude towards the piece, the attitude towards the idea or the premise. One of the questions is does it antagonize you? Here's what's confusing to a lot of people is antagonize doesn't mean angry necessarily. George Carlin used to say to me, take the shit that drives you crazy and make it funny. Take the shit that drives you crazy and make it funny. But it doesn't have to drive you crazy. It can confuse you. It can frustrate you. It can cause you curiosity, right? It doesn't have to be, oh, fuck, man. It's just got to be, like Jerry Seinfeld, what is it with bugs? You know, I think bugs were our first friends. You know, so it's like that kind of approach to it. It's curiosity. But antagonization is like you watch something on TV and you call bullshit, right? You think something is hypocritical. Usually if something is hypocritical, irony is present. And if there's irony present, then you know by looking at the 13 comedy structures. By the way, if you haven't got my 13 comedy structures, get my book. The link is down below in this description. That book is now being referred by a lot of people, including Steve Martin on his Comedy Masterclass. When he gets to the point where he's like, well, you want to learn how to write, go get these 13 comedy structures, and people start buying the book because that's the essence of what pulls the triggers that creates the stimuli in the brain that triggers laughter. So there is a science behind this whole subject, so it's good to know these techniques you can use. So it takes something that antagonizes you. What are you trying to say with the joke? What are you trying to say with it? You know, am I trying to say this is ridiculous? What am I trying to say that I feel bad? I feel like there's an obstacle created in my life. I feel like it creates a dilemma for me. So if you ask yourself, what are you trying to say with the joke? I can't succeed in relationships. Now you're starting with something. Does this make sense? I hope so. I know I'm going a little fast. For the length of this video, there's a lot to unpack here. So you can ask yourself the attitude that you have towards the joke. Is it ridiculous? Do you say, really? Come on. Get the fuck out of here. Are you confused? Things like that. That's weird. That's odd. That doesn't make sense. Show me how those things work. See, now I can't figure out relationships. So now we're getting on to something that antagonizes you, has you emotionally connected. Like, for example, if you're doing current events and there's some behemoth corporation involved in the joke, McDonald's or Boeing or who else is in the news? Burger King, In-N-Out Burger, Chick-fil-A, any company at all that people know, once there's a brand identification, they're going to have some kind of emotional connection to that brand. And you know you have something there. You just have to figure out how to use technique to make it funny. And this is what I like to do, is I like to try to take something and use my technique. I'll give you an example. If we actually take some of the techniques include the 13 comedy structures, right? Using analogy is one process to use to get two dissimilar ideas converging. I like to use cliche takeoffs. I like to use role-playing, working with somebody else and sort of brainstorming the idea. You can actually do this in asking your wife, your significant other, to ask you questions dealing with the subject matter. And I would like to sometimes identifying the subject irony or paradox. If I can find that, usually I can find the funny. But it's not the only way to find the funny. Let's take a premise, for example. Let's take any premise at all. Let's take a premise that people have something that are related to people. Dating, for example, a very generic premise. Now, there are no hacky premises. So some of you out there might have been, heck, there's no such thing as a hacky premise. It's the point of view towards the premise or an angle that's been done a million times that becomes hacky or overdone. All right, so you take Louis C.K. or you take Bill Burr, none of them are doing original material. They're all doing premises and ideas and things we all relate to. Otherwise, we wouldn't tune in. Does this make sense? They just have a unique approach or a unique point of view on those premises. Very few people come up with super original premises. They usually come up with stuff that people can relate to. So if we take the premise of dating, this very simple premise, and we add an angle, that's what's usually missing, an angle. Dating what? How do you find the angle? You ask your attitude about dating, Or you can go through the mechanics of the maxim of the 5 W's. Who, what, where, why, when, and how. That's 5 W's and an H, by the way, if you were counting. Now, you add an angle, so who, what, where, what dealing with dating. Dating, how about dating here? Dating with me. Dating at 55 years old. So if I say dating at 55 years old, dating at my age is hard. Yeah, I'm 55 years old. Dating is hard, man. Because I'm married, right? That could be a start, right? There's one angle. Or how would your wife feel? It's like, I don't even know how to play the game anymore. Is it okay to go Dutch? Is it okay to ask her to pay? I don't know the rules. So I had to ask my wife. That could be one way to approach it, right? Different way of saying I have a wife, or different way of shattering the assumption that I'm single if I'm dating. Or dating at 55, I can also use a compare and contrast, right? A compare and contrast, dating at 55 versus dating at 25. Wow, dating at 55 is so different than dating at 25. I mean, just take safe sex. I know at 55, safe sex is just using a condom. I remember at 25, safe sex was just doing it before her parents got home. So now you have a bit of a joke, right? That can work. And then you can go on from there. And then you can list everything, dating at 55 versus dating at 25, and do a bunch of compares and contrasts. So, and we love side-by-side comparisons. We know this technique works because it shows up in the 13 comedy structures, and we see it work all the time. So, you know, with high odds, you can make this happen by using just a comparison of dating at 25 versus dating at 55. We use compare and contrast in that one. We can riff the idea on stage. Talk about dating with, you know, if you're dating at 55 years old. I remember dating at 25, a date would be like going out for dinner, drinks, and maybe a movie, right? Dating at 55 is going out for dinner, drinks, and maybe some Viagra. So now you have a three-way buildup. You can use a technique just by stepping out the idea. Once you have dating at 55 versus dating at 25, you have the premise. When it's just dating, it's just an idea. It's just a subject. When you have dating plus an angle, dating at 55, now you're getting somewhere. If you have dating at 55 versus dating at 25, you have dilemma. Man, when I was younger, I was able to do this. When I'm at 55, I'm not able to do this or whatever, you know. So you can do, there's lots of different things that you can apply when once you step that out and add that premise, make it a premise rather than just a subject by adding the angle or emotional point of view. How do I feel about it? What's my attitude? Dating at 55 versus dating at 25, that becomes a premise now. You've taken the innocuous idea, the bland dating, and now you've added some sort of a variable to it. You've modified it by giving more specifics, stepping it out a little bit, right? Dating, or what about if I say dating in the new PC environment? Dating in this new hashtag Me Too movement, right? That's a little more complicated because you have to be sensitive to somebody else's sensitivities, and it's heightened now. You're like, you don't know what to do. It's like, I don't even know. It's like, you know, then what I would like to do, if you say dating in the hashtag Me Too movement, that's not where I wanted to go. So if I go back and I look at the possibility of using analogy, if we go back and look at analogy here, if this thing will actually scroll in our all right, so if we go back to technique here, right? Look at number 2, analogy. Analogy. Now, if we have the subject matter, we had dating at 55 versus dating at 25, right? Now, if we go back and look at dating in the hashtag Me Too era, in the women's empowerment era, in the era where you're not sure what you can do. First of all, I mean, the obvious answer is be a gentleman. If you're just a decent human being, I don't think you'll have any problem, right? If you're not a creep, I think you'll be fine. But that's not comedy. I mean, we want to heighten it. We want to make it complicated. We want to show that the comedian has a dilemma. I'm dating in the hashtag Me Too era, and I don't know what to do. I don't know how to, it's almost like playing football in the NFL. I'm afraid I'm going to be flagged for illegal use of hands. So there you have a joke. Now, how heightened the laugh is depends on the emotional development of the joke, how far along is it in the tension of the joke, and also if it is an obvious coincidence or a really big coincidence that, wow, football and dating actually have something in common. I never thought about it that way. That's so true, right? And plus, illegal use of hands fits so well in dating and also fits so well in football, right? Perfectly in both columns because of the hashtag Me Too movement and the sensitivity that guys feel now in dating. We're afraid to make a move, afraid to do anything for fear that we might offend somebody. So again, if we go back to stepping out this premise, that's where the jokes come from. Not just having a premise, and don't get confused at what a premise is and what a subject is. A subject is just one idea, dating. Now, if you add dating in something, dating, step it out with who, what, where, why, when, and how, dating in the hashtag Me Too movement, dating at 55, dating at 55 versus 25, dating in LA, dating in the South, right? What would that be? Dating in the North Pole, dating in New York City, dating in Saudi Arabia, dating in Salt Lake City, dating amongst Mormons, or if you want to make some jokes about polygamists. Now, they'll argue that they're not polygamists, but let's face it, the Orthodox version of the church is still keeps that alive. So I'll call bullshit. So I know most of the modern people that are LDS are not doing that, but there's still over 30,000 polygamists in Utah. I don't want to get into that subject matter. But dating in this type of environment, think about dating in, you can pick anything, dating in the Olympics, dating in Hollywood, dating in the entertainment industry, dating in the rap scene, dating a stripper. That could be a little different, right? So dating a prostitute. One of my students does a joke, dating a prostitute. I'm not really sure when she's cheating on me. I think she was cheating. I don't know. There's no cash exchange. Is she cheating? You know what I'm saying? So you see where we've got you can see once we have dating, let's add something to it to actually make it a premise. Once you have that premise, that will help you get further with the joke by fleshing it out. Now, I think I've pretty much exhausted this particular segment right here. I just wanted to make sure I covered that for you so you guys understood it a little more clearly. And now I would like to just get to the end of this video for the sake of time. I want to say, the other thing, yes, that I wanted to cover is definitely, now once you have your core bit, your core idea, you have it all sort of fleshed out a little bit, you've written it down, you have it down on the page. The reason I say write it down, even if part of your writing is saying it out loud and recording it and then transcribing it. Once you have it on the page, you can control it. You can add things at will using technique, using cliches, using a cliche takeoff. Right? You're talking about dating. You can throw in something like, dating. I think I understand women now because I actually read that book, Men Are From Mars, Women Are From the Mall. I read that book. Turns out Venus is a 40% off sale. Who knew? So now you have using cliche takeoffs to add some more laugh points to the premise of dating. So just using technique to get there. Once you have all of that on the page, so you have the core elements of the set, you get up and you start talking about dating. While you're on stage, that's the second evolution of this premise or this bit. Now this bit is going to flesh itself out by having an interaction with that audience because comedy, stand-up comedy, is a conversation. So I hope this makes sense, right? You get up there, second evolution is getting up on stage. That bit is going to evolve even more. It's you're rewriting it while you're on stage. So I like to have the core bit down first and then get up on stage rather than just having an empty idea and getting up on stage. So I hope this opens up your eyes a little bit to the possibilities you have with just an idea. If you would like to, why don't you send me just some vague premises or vague ideas, and let's see if I can help you step those out into some little bits, just by sort of riffing it out and using some technique, so you can see another way that it can happen. You can try that, and go ahead and use it by hitting me up on Twitter. On Twitter, I am @JokeDoctor, and hit me up with the hashtag AskTheJokeDoctor, and I'll put that together for you. Also, if you want another question asked that's off topic, off this topic, then feel free to put it on my Twitter feed. Hit me up on Twitter, and I'll be happy to put a little video together like this one just for you. So it helps to clarify these ideas that don't fit in 240 characters. So I hope this brought value to your day, and I hope to see you again soon. If you like the channel here, feel free to subscribe. And there's a little bell you'll see at the subscribe button. Click that bell, and it'll ensure that you get notifications every time I put up a new video. I've been traveling a lot, so I haven't had time to really put together a lot of my videos. My apologies, but hopefully we'll get a few more out before summer, more than a few, maybe a dozen, and then hopefully stay on track to put one out every week if we can, but that's not always possible given my travel schedule. Once again, hope this brought value to your day. Hope this is helping you guys to open your eyes to this amazing world of comedy. And anywhere I can help, I'd like to, because that's what I love to do. Take care. I'll talk to you again soon. Bye-bye.